Hi everyone, Elle Hackney here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where I get to speak to everyone in the book community, whether they be authors, illustrators, podcasters, industry professionals. And today I have an industry professional, Stephen from Hipkiss Publishing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all about Hipkiss Publishing. So why don't you tell me and everyone out there what you're all about?
Yeah, look, as an author, I wanted to set up my own sort of publishing house. Haven't got published myself, but I sat down with my wife one night and it's like, well, why wait until this happens for the publishing side to start? So we sort of got back and forth and discussing it, and we decided, we both really love books. We like nice books. We like books with illustrations. We're adults. We can still have illustrated books. There's nothing wrong with having that, and it just adds another level to every book. So having a sort of an easy place to start with the classics, they're out of copyright, they're in the public domain, so we can utilize, and they're stories that have lasted hundreds of years. Pride and Prejudice this year, 250 years since Jane Austen was born. And it's just a great opportunity to put an Australian spin on all the classic books that we have with Australian artists, printed here in Australia, which is something that me and my wife were very sort of strict about. We didn't want to be sort of importing something from China, so we've sort of pushed and dug and found printers that are here. Ours one currently is based in Sydney. So doing really nice editions of really good works, really good stories. I did have to make one condition for my wife. She has to get book number one. So they are hand numbered. So she has to have book number one for all the sort of works and bits and pieces we're doing. But, it's a small price to pay. She does a lot of work now. She's been sucked into it. And we've developed the publishing, and we've got the 3 books out. It's a small start, but 5 coming out this year, which is much, much bigger. And we've been out working on that. But it came from just a love of stories, love of books, and wanting those fantastic books for an Australian audience.
And I love what you're doing. It's so different. So you're getting those classics that are centuries old and you're putting the Aussie spin on them. So why don't you sort of embellish how you're doing that?
Well, we had to find the illustrators to start off with, which was kind of an interesting. And Matthew Broughton was our first one who did Study in Scarlet, and he will also be doing Frankenstein because it's a book he really liked. And finding him, we went on Illustrators Australia, website, sort of community website where they're also registered. You can go through their portfolios. And we had an image of what we wanted. So the Study in Scarlet, every illustration has a bit of red through it. And we look for an artist that could sort of bring that into his art style. And, went back and forth, eventually found Matthew, which I think was just an absolutely brilliant find. He's been so helpful, not just in the illustrator aspect of it, but as a business sort of professional, and giving advice, helping out with logos, all these bits and pieces that you don't really think about. There is just so much more to learn in publishing than me going, yeah, let's create some books. That can't be that hard.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, we found Matthew, and yeah, got started. And Caroline, we also found, and through the same way, and Elizabeth Bott that did Christmas Carol. After that, Kim contacted us through Instagram and, sort of building up that reputation and looking for more illustrators. So yeah, Kim contacted us and built from there. It's, fantastic. And we give them a creative brief, obviously, guidelines on what we're looking at, what illustrations, but the artwork and style and what they sort of bring to it is completely up to them. I don't sort of force them into a very small box. I want them to put their stamp on it. Hence, the illustrators are always named on the books for what they do.
And so with your illustrators, I'm just curious because you were searching for them, but then Kim DeHaan came to you. So do you prefer moving forward that illustrators submit their work to you?
I much prefer somebody who is passionate about the book that we're going to do. So yeah, by all means, they can come to us directly. I keep a file of every illustrator that we've used who has been in touch with us in the past. And for every project, we'll go through that first. Obviously, the illustrators I do use or have used, kind of get a first look at what I'm going to do in the future, and if they think that they want to do that project, or that's something really interests them, then yeah, they're more than happy to put their hand up and say, yeah, that one's for me. Hence Matthew's doing Frankenstein. He's like, that's a book I love. It's like, it's just so much easier if they love the book, if they're passionate about the book, then give it to them, and they can come up with their own style, their own thing of it. And the illustrations for Frankenstein are coming through, and they are just fantastic. Really, really good. Dark, scary places, but yeah, that's what it's about. And yeah, and Kim's going to continue doing all of Jane Austen. So to have it as a series, not a series as such, but a box set eventually, she'll do every book for Jane Austen, hopefully. And it's just brilliant working with such brilliant people.
And like you said, passionate too, because it does show. I think, like, you're so right that if you stay authentic to what you do, it does show, and it makes your application that little bit stronger.
Yeah.
So for those out there who are watching this video who are illustrators, it's good to know Hipkiss Publishing are open to accepting submissions, and also show what you're passionate about if we're going to take anything away from that conversation, because it obviously shows in your work to those professionals in the know. And Stephen, you did say that you're a writer. What genre do you write?
I write majoritively in fantasy. So I started writing back in probably 2000, 1999, maybe. And I was very much the fantasy and trilogy back in those days, and they still are. But I started and didn't finish that book until 2009. And I did send some very, very unlucky publishing houses a copy of that very first draft, which never ever do. Yeah, and it took me a few years. My wife was always saying it's a good book. It's something to work on, and I never sort of really did. But in the last sort of 4 years, I've picked up writing properly, spending a lot more time in it. That I finished that trilogy. And the first book has been edited and professionally edited and sent out. I have had copies going out to readers to see what other people like, because it is my first book and it's not your ideal place to start. And from there, I've written another fantasy standalone, which is a not quite a cozy fantasy, but it's not the big bad either. It's what you'll do to protect your family and get your family back. So it's you're having all the power, you have all the magic. What will you actually do with that to get your family back?
That sounds intriguing.
It's an interesting question, yeah, because it's not so much then the fighting and all that. It's the efforts people go through to get their family back, with a very interesting twist. And yeah, so that's very cool. And I was at the Gold Coast Writers Group actually recently. Oh, not so recently, probably last year now. And one of the ladies there said, well, what did you used to write? And back when I was in school and for exams and all these things that you had to write for English, etc., I always wrote diving, boating, treasure hunting kind of stories, marine life. I love marine life. Hence I did biological studies as a degree. And we were talking and I was like, well, no, I've done my diving qualifications. I've got my bachelor's in marine science. I'm currently a skipper on a rescue vessel. So I've got all these aspects. So I'm writing an Australian-based sort of romantic adventure where they sort of go treasure hunting. So they meet on the Sydney to Hobart race. One lives in Perth, one lives in Brisbane. They create a relationship sort of back and forth. There's free diving involved, and they go to the Trial, which is the oldest shipwreck in Australian waters. So it's from like the 1600s, and it's actually over in Western Australia. So basing it all sort of historical fiction, but yeah. So this is a little bit outside of what I'm usually write, but it's a really interesting one to write because yeah, it's very different. And you can just Google the sort of things because it's based in 94 to 96. So because you have history and you know what's going to happen, I put them in path of a cyclone, which is one of the worst Australia's ever had. So it's going to be quite an impressive little adventure that they're going on. But yeah, all these bits and pieces, because of my experience, my knowledge that I've had now that I'm a bit older, I can put all this into a proper story and see if I can, what I used to write as a child and, a teenager, if I can write the actual story that was always sort of there and wanting to be done.
Gosh, it sounds incredible. It sounds like you're where you're meant to be. Because if this was sort of like your journey as a child and you've got all these fantastic stories and now you're telling them now, it kind of just seems like this is what you're meant to be doing. I love
Yeah,
that story. That is
it
fantastic.
really does feel like it is. It was a very much a light bulb moment when the lady said, "It's like, what you used to write about," and it's like I'm looking at all my sort of life experience and where I am, and how I got here, and all these bits and pieces, and it says like and being in Australia, etc. It just all tied in together so nicely. That yeah, looking forward to. I think that would be very marketable and will hopefully be an easy pitch to Australian publishers, especially bit outside of what I'm used to writing, which is good for me and as a writer, because I do still love fantasy. I do want to write fantasy a lot more and do bits and pieces. But it does grab me very much as well because it's putting them in the marine world. You got over there, you diving with the sharks, the reef, the dive sites. It's just all brilliant and things that I love.
And also, sorry, just going back to good old 1994, because that's the time, right? Like you said, the stories between 94 and 96.
Yeah.
I'm rewinding in my memory a little bit, and I don't think the technology on boats is what it is now. So, like the internet,
No.
hard no. And it's like sailing into a cyclone. I'm kind of guessing it, excuse me if I'm wrong, easily done because it's not like you have technology to sort of to guide you. Like,
Yeah, so I've put together a timeline. No, they didn't have the technology. It was all radio contact back to shore who would have had, a telex of the weather report. So I, got them out in the boat. They're having 5-day calls back to base to sort of say that they're all right. They're not going to realize the radio is out because they don't use it for like 5 days. So that's when the cyclone is built. So all of a sudden now they're in there. It's looking a bit weird. They go and call up. No radio, and too late to get anywhere. They're
don't
just
tell
going to
me
call
the ending. Don't
no,
leave me.
the end is not in there, but that's where they're going to be.
Leave me there, Stephen. Because that sounds awesome. That sounds so compelling.
Yeah, everybody I speak to about it, it's especially with the Australian bits. There's a fair bit of a sort of romantic story in it as well, starting off because you've got two people they randomly meet on this Sydney to Hobart trip. She's already in a relationship, he's not. They really sort of click, they get on. It's just straight away, and they spend a lot of time, as we used to back in the 90s, on a landline phone. So they talk and they get to know each other really well, which causes obviously problems with her relationship. But that's what we used to do with the phone lines and things. There's no mobile phones. There's none of this stuff. And I put them into a lot of horrendous situations, and we see how they go.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh, so publishers out there, if you receive a submission from Stephen, say yes, because Lauren Hackney needs to know what happens. Stephen, do you use like programs to help you write, or do you just stick to like a Word document, or are you a scripter or a plotter?
I am a complete pantser. I have a Word document. I start at the beginning with an idea and I sit down and write. I have no idea what's going to happen in my stories, basically. I just go along and the story takes me where I want. Fashuran, which is the one about, getting your family back. I wrote this particular chapter, and it's about this lovely lady. She helps out. Lovely person. And I got to the end of it, and I'm like, she's horrible. There's been nothing about her that was horrible. There was nothing saying she was a lovely person, had a child, And I'm like, no, she's horrible. And the very, very next chapter, she goes into this horrible, absolutely, she's a horrendous human being. And it's like, wow, didn't see that coming. But it's just something that was just there. It's just, I wrote it and spoke to my wife. We were down in Tasmania at the time when I was doing a little writing thing, which was really nice. And I was just like, I think she's just not a nice human being. And she's not. She really isn't. But I didn't know this at the beginning. I just sit down and write. And, if it takes some time being sort of that sort of pantser, you can't just sit down half an hour and write. it usually takes half an hour to get into writing. You get distracted, you go and do this and that, reread the last couple of paragraphs, think to yourself. But once you get into it, it just flows so nicely. It can drop 2,000, 3,000 words and it's just easy. And it's just like, yeah, I can really enjoy it. And that's what it's about.
Do you find now that you've started Hipkiss, right, and that's doing so well, do you find knowing a little bit more about publishing has helped your writing?
I think it does. You get a bit of an understanding of the slush piles and the bits and pieces that the publishers have to go through. They get a bit of a bad name and a bad rep for picking books and the responses that you get, the queries that you get sent. But I've been in touch with publishers a bit more with this now, because they obviously, I'm not speaking to them about my book as a submission. And yeah, it's a very different world. It's quite a hard world, I think, for the publishers to get through all of those. And that's why a lot of people, and you hear a lot of stories, it's like, oh, well, I knew a guy who sort of said, oh, you should speak to this person, and that can lead to something a lot more successful than 50 to 60 query letters out. But it's definitely given me a better understanding, and I hope a better standing as well as an author. People will see what I've done, what I've created, and have a bit of like, well, he knows the industry and he knows a bit more about it. Perhaps what he's submitting is not just your first draft. Woohoo, I finished a book, so I'm going to send it to a publisher, which I have done and don't recommend.
Yeah, don't send the first draft.
Yeah.
So with your journey and having Hipkiss, having, a trilogy, a standalone book, this sailing book in the works, which sounds amazing. What is your advice from someone listening to this interview who would just love to be in your shoes?
Consistency. Consistency is definitely a sort of strong point. I've given up writing and taken up writing and given up writing and sort of taken up writing. And if I'd consistently written, I could be 10 years further ahead than I am now. But you do also have to live your life and earn those experiences. So it's not all about the writing. If you enjoy it, just enjoy it and write as much as you can. And sadly, editing is essential. And it is sadly, because I'm not a fan of editing. Being a pantser, my first drafts are a little bit on the sort of loose side, but having it edited, even yourself, passed on to the next person. They don't have to be a professional, but they do have to read it and, go through those things. It makes a big difference to your story. It makes a big difference to yourself, learning along the way of what other people have recommended, what other people see in your punctuation and grammar, because I am horrible at punctuation and grammar. But you don't need those kind of things. You can build a career out of this just purely on imagination and hard work.
And so with you mentioned the Gold Coast Writers. Is that like a critique group for you, or are you part of a critique group?
I'm not part of a critique group, but they do run critique groups of the Gold Coast Writers. Sadly, on both times that they run it weekly, I am occupied doing other things. But the people there, you can sort of take work to who are willing to. There's one of the ladies, she's got a publishing deal. She's going to be reading the Fashuran one with the family in next month, once I finished another round of edits on the grammar, which another friend of mine is doing. And yeah, so they do have all those things. And being part of writers groups, your local ones especially, you get to meet monthly. You talk about all, like, hobbies. You're all writers. You're all there for the sort of same reason. So you can speak to people, and there's other fantasy writers which you don't generally meet in the sort of general public out and about in the world. But there's everybody that's got all different sort of writing goals, and published authors are there. There's aspiring ones, self-published authors are there. The whole experience is there that you can sort of tap into and speak to and find out about the industry and about, what other people's stories are and how hard it has been, but how worth it is in the end. And, perseverance and just sticking with it. can be supported by these people with their own stories.
I really agree with you on that one. It's almost like celebrating other people's successes when you're in those groups. Feels like your own, because you've seen their journey and you've watched them grow something, and you can't help but to be like caught up in what they've achieved. I'm with you on that one. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Can I just ask as well, because you do sit on both sides of the fence, Stephen. You have your own publishing firm, and you're an aspiring writer as well. Tell me, with social media, how important is it to market yourself on social media, do you feel?
I think you can never start soon enough. Even if I see a lot of people put aspiring author sort of Instagram stories and things like that. And the aspiring bit, I'm not a huge fan of, because if somebody's completed a book, they are an author. If they have a completed book, it's just you are an author. You're just not published yet. So the Instagram, and I've spoken to a few people. Obviously, they come up to me when we do the live shows and we speaking and selling face to face, because they want to know sort of how to increase the chances and all that. And it's not imperative that they have social media, but I think growing that audience, having people that have followed your journey, may well make a huge difference when it comes to selling your book at the end. If they've been there with you for the 2 years that you've been persevering, writing, putting up snippets of what you're doing, and just your journey in general, I think that's a great incentive for people at the end of it to say, yes, I want their book, because we've seen what they've gone through, we've seen what they've done, and you can follow the whole journey and say, yeah, look, and they finished, and this is the end product, and they get to read it. And Instagram especially has been a very sort of supportive, bookish group that, yeah, you just got to reach out to as many people as you can. I started probably about 6 months later than I should have with all my social media stuff, which you don't realize until later on. But yeah, if people start straight away, it's advisable.
Well, it's good to know, because sitting on both sides of the fence and having that contact on a professional level with other publishers when you're representing Hipkiss as well, it's nice to know what you know, because you can ask those questions in a professional environment with other publishers. Yeah. I am curious, because I know Book Week is huge in primary schools with picture books and chapter books, that kind of thing. Is Hipkiss Publishers, are they available to say high school students during Book Week, for those who want to become authors, who want to become writers? Do you do information sessions for students, or do you even do information sessions for adults?
I haven't done anything like that in the past as yet. We've been going for a year and 4 months, but we're more than happy to people contact me, go and discuss things, show what we do, show what they can do, because like I said, I sit both sides, so it's a bit of that author, a bit of the publishing. And yeah, I'd be more than happy to speak to people, schools and otherwise, that, just to encourage and for the writing and what you can achieve with it.
So anyone watching this video today, I do have the golden goose with me. His name is Stephen. He sits on both sides of the publishing world. He is an author and owns a publishing house. So educators out there, librarians, if you're looking for someone who's available for Zoom meetings in a group environment for either a Q&A session or some sort of writing inspiration session, please contact him. Stephen, how do we contact you for any information about your books, publishing, to follow yourself and your journey? How do we all contact you?
Yeah, so the webpage is hipkisspublishinghouse.com. It's got a contact us on there, which links to email, which again is just info@hipkisspublishinghouse.com. And yeah, I check that daily. So, and on Instagram, TikTok and Pinterest, I think, are on. It's all Hipkiss Publishing House. There's not that many Hipkiss Publishing Houses out there. So, if you search for that, it is just generally me.
All right, so everyone watching this video, we do want to see Hipkiss Publishing explode in the publishing world, both Australia and internationally. So make sure you follow them, share their content, buy their books, review them on Goodreads and where you buy them from, and make sure you support Stephen and his publishing journey. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really enjoyed hearing about your journey today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Lauren. No, it's been really good. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.